Hi everybody, and welcome to week 3 of Business 300, where we're going to be focusing on working with groups and individuals. I want to talk a little bit about the two assignments that are due for this section. The first is the discussion, and you're going to answer 1 out of 4 possible discussion questions. I'm not going to read through each of the questions in detail. However, I want to kind of give you my thoughts on how to approach this type of discussion. The reading is really the crux of, where these questions are coming from. And so before you attempt the discussion, it's really important that you do the reading and make notes for yourself. Because for the most part, you're trying to recall aspects of the reading and apply what you've learned in the discussion. Pick, in terms of which question to pick whichever, appeals to you the most or makes the most sense to you. You want to cite the readings and try to make connections to the material wherever possible. And if there is the opportunity in your question for you to reflect on any of your own personal experience, that's also really helpful. So please feel free to do that as well. In terms of the assignment, there's 2 different parts this week. The first is that I want you to read the foreground of the case study for our simulation and answer the following questions in detail. It's important that you understand before you complete the simulation, and certainly as you're reflecting upon what happens during the simulation, what's going on at Spectrum Sunglass. And the foreground provides that detail. The kind of brief case history in the company, some trends in the markets, and that's supposed to help inform you and guide your decision making as you're completing the simulation. So think about, what are the challenges facing Spectrum Sunglass? How are they doing financially? Give examples from the foreground. It's the research is done. All you need to do is pull out the facts. What is their sustainability initiative? What do you think about the change agent's objectives? Is it possible? Is it too ambitious? Feel free to give your pros and cons to that and your thoughts. And how do the change agent's colleagues react to his or her suggestions, and why? Some of the changes and the levers that you may choose to pull in the simulation are going to have a different types of effects on the colleagues of yours within Spectrum Sunglass. And so it's important to understand not only how the colleagues react, but also to reflect upon why. Why are they choosing to support or reject the initiative? Why are certain things very meaningful towards the change effort and others only have a small impact? So think through that. Then for part 2, you're going to choose your strategy and run a practice round of the simulation. So I've assigned you a role within the simulation, and what I want you to do is play out your role. It's not about how many points you get or whether your change initiative or decision making is correct or incorrect. It's more about the experience and reflecting on what happened and why. And I would like people to let me know how the simulation is going, because if people need help walking through that, I want to be able to provide that for people. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the text for this week and just hit on a few major points that you're going to find during your reading. So the first major topic is on the natural development of work groups, and that there's some basic conditions for effective work groups. I'm sure all of us have worked in groups before on projects, maybe at work or at school, and sometimes those groups are effective and sometimes they are not effective. And there's a number of factors that can influence that. So one of those is size. Obviously the size of the work group is going to influence the resources that you have available. The more people, the more resources you have, but there is probably a point at which there's too many people and too many voices to actually get achievement. So size is important, but it's also a double-edged sword. You need the group to be big enough, but not too big at the same time. Effective work groups have a purpose. They have a framework from which they're working on. The best, types of change initiatives are those that have a plan and the plan is executed. And so that purpose really drives the work group, and so it can be very important. The duration and stability of a work group is important. How long have these people worked together? How stable is each of them in their role in the group? Those are things that you'll have to consider in an effective work group. There's practical implications as well. Effective work groups, with technology, sometimes it's easier now for groups or people to come across or to collaborate on projects from any location, but there are practical implications. So location, proximity, knowledge base, all of those types of things. In Exhibit 18.1, they discuss emergent group leadership and talk about 4 group leadership roles. So I want to talk a little bit about those really quickly. Task leader is one of them, and that's usually the person that knows the most about the task requirements. They're the person that kind of knows what needs to get done and divvies those tasks up. There's an emotional leader, the person with the greatest personal investment in the task. The person who's concerned with relationships and how people collaborate and compromise. That's your emotional leader. Your deviant leader is your clarifications of limits and boundaries. So this person is making sure that everybody's playing within the rules and that everyone is, and clarifying anything that needs to be clarified so that everyone can work together effectively. And then a boundary conscious leader, who facilitates the testing of commitment. So each of these different 4 group leadership roles, they're all needed in their own way. So it's not to say that one is better than any of the others, and it's not bad if you possess the skills to be one of these types of leaders and not another. It's just understanding who should take the leadership of these critical tasks and divvying them up based on skill set. So that's something to think about when you're putting together a group. A couple of other things. As work groups emerge, they develop complex internal structure. So how people work together, how power is divvied up within these work groups, who makes the decisions, who are your followers. There's a very complex way that people interact with one another. And as your work groups emerge and grow, they will also develop these complex structures within them. And they're in Exhibit 18.2, you're given the 9 developmental phases of group work. So definitely take a look at those. They kind of go through sort of the natural phases that a group has. Things such as phase 1, which is kind of contracting each other's services and the assessment of your group, to phase 5, which is tolerance and adjustment to limitations within the group, to phase 9, where the task is over and you separate and acknowledge the hard work that everybody did. So definitely do take a look at these 9 developmental phases of group work as well. Another topic from this week is sustaining change. And ultimately, that's the goal of any change initiative. You don't want to institute typically, change that's going to be short-lived. Organizations are looking to get the big bang out of their change efforts and to sustain those changes over time so that those aren't issues that they'll have to address again in the future. So, definitely this is also part of what's going to come up in the simulation. And in this simulation, as you're going to see in the foreground and as you get into it, the goal is that there's change initiatives that need to be made. And there's different people have different approaches for how they see the change and what they think is needed to drive effective change. And so as a OD consultant, you're helping your clients deal with this constant change and understand how to do it effectively so that they're not constantly burdened by change, but know how to navigate this as different change needs come about. So, you know, a lot of the times when you talk to people, people remember kind of the negative experiences. And so, as you ask people as an OD consultant about their experiences, you're going to hear a lot of stories, and you'll hear things about, oh, this was a terrible experience. I once worked for a company that was rolling out a new ERP system, so essentially the computer system that they use to run the business. And, as we were working through this, other people had come from other businesses that had gone through this, and many of them relayed these horror stories of what was to come. And so, as a consultant, those stories also let us learn from other people's experiences. And I remember as I was going through that particular change initiative, and I listened to people describe some of the reasons why this ERP implementation didn't go well at their company, I tried to keep those in mind and to steer clear of them within the change initiative that my own company was undertaking. So there's also a couple of case studies that are helpful in this example of sustaining change. So definitely do check those out in the text. One is on the Georgia Health Policy Center, one is on IKEA, and another one is on the Girl Scouts. Okay, a couple more things about the simulation. So by this point you've purchased your simulation and you've viewed the how to play video, which is up on the site. So definitely play around. There are different resources on there. And they are, all there to try to help navigate you and get you as prepped as possible before you get into the simulation. You've read the foreground for the spectrum sunglass, so you understand what the background of the case is. So now, with this week, what you're going to do is you're going to ensure that you've read the description of the role that I've assigned you, and then you're actually going to complete the simulation. So the simulation is now open, and it's meant to provide you a hands-on interactive experience. And really, the takeaway here is that there's no one way to approach change. Different ways are going to lead change in different ways, and there's no simple, straightforward way for leading it either. Different leadership styles can work. Different projects call for different types of leaders, and as a result, that's kind of what the simulation is showing you, is based on the role that you're assigned and the decisions that you make, how effective you are at being able to incorporate change at Spectrum Sunglass. So please log into the simulations and let the games begin.